All right, what's up, y'all? And welcome back to the Michael Experience Podcast. I am your orator and originator, Michael, and these are my thoughts, my life, my way. So, as we kind of step away from our latest series and we move into a new topic, that's what we like to do here. I want to move into some truths. And I want to talk about that because I feel like there's so many times in our lives where things happen, and whether it is mid session or mid interaction with somebody, or whether it's post action. So, in retrospect, I think we go through a series of emotions and feelings regarding what really happened. And maybe sometimes in hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Or maybe in hindsight, I found a different lesson or a different angle in it. So I wanted to talk about those things because I do believe there are a lot of feelings, a lot of thoughts, a lot of emotions, and just all around like a lot of deep, intrinsic, and internal things that we all hold because we don't want to talk about it. So let's get into some hard truths today. I want to talk about the first time I cheated. So I know that sounds horrible. It sounds horrible. And I remember having a conversation with friends, and one of the girls said to me, "Well, Michael, we've told you all of our stories, but have you ever cheated?" And I hesitated for a second. And it wasn't that I didn't know if I cheated or not. It was just that that pause was kind of like, I don't want to say that I actually have cheated. And the other part of it was, it had been so long ago that I was like, it doesn't really count. But it does really count. It does really still make me feel some type of way to talk about it. So let's talk about it. So when I was 20 years old, 19, somewhere between 19 and 20 years old, it was my first boyfriend. So I came to the LGBTQ later in life, and it was my first boyfriend. And so me and him, we went through a series of things in that relationship. And if there's one thing in my life when people say, "Can you do it over?" I honestly would choose to do I wouldn't wanna do it over. I wouldn't wanna do it with him, honestly. I just would like, if I could just erase him, I really, really would, because that was, like, crazy everything that happened. But since you can't go back in time and you can't change it, you just learn from it. But he and I went through a series of things. One of those things is we tried to live together for a very short period of time. And so when we tried to live together, I feel like we really got to know each other. Although it didn't last but a couple of months, but we really got to know each other. Like, I got to see like how his partying really was, because prior to that, I saw the man like weekends and maybe like a random weekday or something. And so I wasn't really concerned about what he did throughout the week. Like, we talked on the phone, that kind of thing. So I really didn't think anything about it. But that was kind of our thing. But once you move in with somebody, you then see like all of their bad habits, good habits and bad habits. So, not to belabor the point, but as we moved through the journey of living together, there were just some things for me that were becoming more and more just hard to deal with. And like I said, the partying was one of those things. I feel like if you are in relationship, you should come home at an acceptable hour. Now, what is an acceptable hour? Whatever we discussed is an acceptable hour. So if you tell me you're going to come home at 2, be home at 2. If you tell me you're going to be home at 12, be home at 12. But what that doesn't mean is to just take advantage and come home at 5 or 6, or roll in at 8 o'clock the next morning before work without any, a description or any, excuse or reason for your behavior. Like, that's very inconsiderate. So I think that was the first thing for me that was a little bit alarming. But, being younger, okay, fine. And also for me, I wasn't accustomed to the gay lifestyle. So a lot of that stuff that was happening, I didn't even have a lens for what it was. I was just kind of like, okay, I'm dealing with this guy. He goes and does all the things, the balls, the club, the whatever he does. So I was like, okay, that's fine. But I remember one night we were in bed, and I tried to come on to him. Now, he would only go so far. Like, he would only go so far. And this happened a couple times. And I was like, why is this dude not wanting to, be intimate with me, or more than intimacy? Why did he want to have sex with me? Let me just say it like that. And I couldn't figure it out because throughout our whole relationship, like, we definitely had good chemistry in that way. And I always got it when I wanted to with him. So I never understood why, like, at this point, he may try to do like some oral stuff, or something like that, but he never wanted to just go all the way. So I was like, I don't know what's going on with this dude. Like, I don't know what happened. I'm like, did I hurt him the last time? So in my mind, I'm thinking of all of these things that could be, happening, and I'm wondering, like, maybe I did do something, or I'm just going through it because honestly I just want us to get back to, the way that we were, or whatever. And for context, I am 6'1". I'm very well endowed in areas, and he was like 5'5", some little petite, some, I mean, he was well endowed in areas too, but he didn't really get down like that, which is fine which is fine, or whatever. But so he's like this small petite little something. Not that that really, sometimes that be the, well, anyway. But so anyway, in my mind, I thought like maybe I did something, maybe I had heard him before or something like that, and he just didn't want to tell me. But whatever. So after a few times of feeling like I was rejected, I kind of was like, I had a conversation with him. I'm like, what's going on? Like, is there somebody else? Like, you not feeling me? I'm asking questions like, are you not enjoying it? Like, are you wanting to, do me? Like, what's going on? And he's like, no, nothing's going on. I'm so busy and so stressed and da da da, da. Which didn't make sense to me because you still party. Like, you still left, you still party, you still did all that or whatever. But now that you're here, you want me to believe that you are just so tired and so whatever. Okay, fine. So after a while of being rejected, there was one night that I remember very, very vividly as the night I cheated. I remember like just trying my hardest to, like, getting fired up and foreplay and just all that stuff. And I was like, okay, he gotta be ready at this particular point or whatever. But nope, he kind of shook me off, and I was just kind of like, wow, like, this is crazy. And I had been, it had probably been like at least a month, I want to say, maybe more, I don't know, but it had been a long time since I had some. Now, I know some people probably like, that's not a long time. It's a long time when you're not used to going that long, especially with the person that you with. Like, that's crazy. So, yeah, so he shrugged me off or whatever. So it was like, I want to say it was like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, somewhere around that time or whatever. So I text this guy that I used to know. And when I say I used to know him internally. And so I hit him up like, hey, what's up? What you doing or whatever? He's like, oh, yeah, slide through, whatever, whatever. So I went over there. I'm like, yeah, got my sweats on. I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm about to finally get me some. And it's good. So yeah, So I go over there to his place. We do it, whatever. So then I'm like, dang, I gotta go home. Cause he's like, spend the night or whatever. When you get up, I'll cook for you. Cause he be trying to cook for me and stuff. I'm like, gotta cook for me. But he was like, you gotta go. I was like, yeah, I gotta go or whatever. He's like, all right, well, hit me up, whatever, whatever, whatever. So I go home. I go home and I get in the shower because, like, I'm not about to go home and like, and get in the bed smelling like some other dude. Like, nah, I'm like, or whatever. So I go home, I get back in the bed, and I lay there with him or whatever. And I felt so dirty laying in the bed. I felt so dirty. I mean, I didn't know. I remember I went to put my arm around him, and I just was like, should you even put your arm around this dude? You just left somebody else's house. Like, and then you gonna get your butt back in the bed. But I was like, whatever. So I kind of just laid there for a little bit, and then he kind of like grabbed my hand, and I ended up laying with him or whatever. And so the next morning, I remember him asking me, like, "Oh, you got up in the middle of the night." I was like, "Oh yeah, one of my friends called. They was going through something, so whatever." So he was like, "Okay, cool." He's like, "Everything good?" I was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, everything is good or whatever." So he didn't make no big fuss about it or anything like that. He just asked me the question. We went about our business, and that was it at the end of the day or whatever. But it ate me up so bad to be around this man that at the time, it was the first boyfriend. I thought I loved him, and I probably did as much as I could to the extent that I could, right? With knowing what I knew of love back then. So I really did love him, loved spending time with him and stuff like that. I just for whatever reason, my desire got the best of me and I just went for it or whatever. But anyway, it ate me up so bad, and he would come home, and then I would just kind of be like, I don't even want to kiss this dude because now I didn't put my lips somewhere else, and I just don't want to do it. I just feel dirty or whatever. So about a week went by of us doing this back and forth thing, not really, being real close to each other, like in the bed, yes, but not like in a sexual way. And so finally one day I was like, I gotta get this out because I don't like to have a bunch of secrets, especially with my partner. I don't like to have secrets, just generally, but especially with my partner, I don't like to have them. Like, I feel like we should be able to talk to each other about anything, and I feel like we should be able to deal with anything with each other. I felt that way then. I still feel that way today. And one of the things that I always carried was like, I want to be able to tell the truth and be honest, even when it's hard and even when it hurts. And so I just kept thinking about that over and over and over because that's what I would ask of my person. So I'm like, you need to be honest, Michael, even when it's hard and even when it hurts. And so like like I said, a week had gone by, and we were sitting at home just laying there, and I was like, babe, I need to talk to you about something. And he's like, oh, okay, cool. I was like, I don't even know how to say this, but this is like one of those conversations that I don't know how you're gonna feel about it, but I can't keep going or whatever. And he's like, oh, okay, cool, everything okay? Like, you good? And I was like, yeah, I'm good. But something might not be, I mean, we might not be after this. And he was like, okay. And I was like, so you remember when I got up in the middle of the night? And he was like, yeah. I was like, I told you that I was going to meet a friend, and that really that really wasn't the case or whatever. I was like, it really wasn't the case. And he looked at me like with this look, and he had like a slight grin on his face, like not like not like he was about to bust out laughing, but he kind of had this grin on his face, like, I know, I already know. And so he grinned a little bit. He looked at me and he was like, you cheated, didn't you? And I was like, yeah, I did. I was like, and I'm really, really sorry. I was like, I know that doesn't change it. I was like, I'm really, really sorry. And it really didn't mean anything like that. I just, like, we hadn't been doing it for a while. Not that that's an excuse, but like I felt bad about it. I was like, and I couldn't, I just couldn't keep this to myself any longer and be around you. So I don't know how you're gonna feel about that. I don't know if you're gonna want to leave, but I just wanted to make sure that I came clean. And he just kind of grabbed my hand and he was like, no. He was like, I'm not leaving. He was like, I'm not leaving. He was like, I'm not happy that you cheated or anything like that. He was like, but the truth is, I was withholding from you, and I can understand, like, if, the person you're with is withholding, that you might, you know, want to get it somewhere else. And so I just remember just feeling like I don't know what to do with that, right? This is the first time this has happened to me. Also, the first time that I'm with a guy. And not the first time I slept with a guy, but the first time I've been in a relationship with a guy and I'm having to say like I cheated. But yeah, like he literally took it that way. He never brought it up ever again. I've never cheated after that, but with anybody, but he never brought it up after that. And so At first, I thought to myself that I was like, well, maybe he's just handling this really well. And I was like, maybe he just handles it really well. He's very mature. I don't know. But as time went on, I did find out that he was cheating a whole lot. So I think that was probably, I mean, I'm laughing now, but I think that was why he really didn't care because he was already getting his, which is what most people would have assumed first, knowing, culture and the community and how things happen. I didn't know anything about it. So I'm none the wiser sitting here thinking that he's faithful to me and all this stuff or whatever. But, no, I found out after we broke up though that I found out some things when we were together, but then I found out some things like after we broke up that I was like, wow, this is really hurtful. Like, this is really hurtful. But at this point, like, what can you do? And to be honest, I don't know. Like, I go back and forth with if I would have known, would it have made my decision any different or any easier? I don't know, but I'd like to think that if I knew without a shadow of a doubt that he was cheating, that I wouldn't have cheated back to get a lick back, like most people would say, because I've always had this thing where I want my person to be my person and I don't want to share. And the moment that you step outside of that for me, it's just kind of like a no-no. Now again, you're probably thinking like, well, when you stepped out, he should have left you. Absolutely. And he would have been well within himself to leave, hate me, decide he don't want to deal with me anymore. And I would have understood it 1000% because I'm that way when it comes to somebody cheating on me. Like it's no, it's gonna be a no. But I think about that conversation and how hard it is to say, even now that I'm doing this episode, it's very hard to say that I cheated, especially given what I felt at that time for him, but also given that years later I've seen the devastation that cheating has done to other people, and I'd hate to put myself, in that number or category of men that cheat. But the truth is, I did do it regardless of what time period it was. I still did it. And to be able to say that and accept it for whatever it is super important to me. So I would say to anybody that has cheated and has felt some type of way about it, or to a person that is cheating right now, and maybe you're not really thinking about the after effects or the long term effects of it. I would just say you owe it to yourself to sit with it. And then if you really love the person, right? If you really love the person or you care or some type of good feeling, good tidings toward the person or whatever, like you owe it to them at some point to just say, yo, it's not working for whatever reason. Like if you want to leave, leave. I've heard so many stories from like friends and people around that they stay in relationships because they don't want to hurt people's feelings, but continually stepping outside of the relationship. And I'm always wondering, like, what do you think that person is going to feel when they find out that you have been living essentially a second life the whole time? You know what I mean? It's one thing to have your world crash and burn in a day, right? It crash and burns in a day and you kind of get over it. But it's something about that slow burn and that slow destruction that I think really erodes and eats away at a person, right? if you cheat if you cheat at all, it's not a good thing. Let me just preface what I'm about to say with that. If you cheat at all, it's not a good thing. It's not. You should leave, right? Before you get to that point if you feel like that's not it. And if you make a mistake, right? Cuz I know life happens. People party different, people do all kinds of things that land them in situations. I would just say like if you're in that category, I think you should well, I shouldn't say I think you should. What I would do is the thing that is hard to do, which is tell the truth, you know? And that is still my personal policy to this day, that I want to be able to tell the truth even when it's hard. You have to be able to tell the truth even when it's hard. So if you make a mistake, I don't know how you accidentally do it, but I've heard some stories. If you accidentally find yourself in it, tell the truth even when it hurts. It may hurt you, it may hurt them, it may hurt both of you, it may hurt the other person involved. Maybe they got entangled in it, but tell the truth. It's the only thing that's going to set you free on all sides. It's the only thing that's going to set you free. But so many people stay and they prolong people's suffering because, like my situation, right? Like I said, it was a month, maybe a little bit more than a month. I was alienated from his affection. I guess I'll say it that way. Like, imagine people who go through that for months or years. You know what I'm saying? And that's something that they crave to be touched, and they crave to touch the person that they love. And they just are, shrugged off or made to feel like, they're bothersome or worrisome. Like, that's not a good feeling. And I think there are a lot of people who sit in that over and over and over again until finally something happens and the floodgates open, kind of like my situation, right? Like, if I had a if like, I mean, it did happen. So on one hand, I do want to say, like, the floodgates did open, but I wasn't with him long enough for it to have as big of an impact. But think about, like, years, and then you have to find out for years that person is cheated. And so now you're replaying in your mind every day that you got turned away. And I think that's very, very real, because for me, I know I did. When we were done, we were at least 5 or 6 months done when I found out all of the cheating that he was actually doing. And some of it was just like crazy. But I had to recount all of the times that I tried with him, that I know I tried, and he pushed me away. And I was like, wow, that is really, really crazy. And even more so, I was like, dang, was it, you know what I mean? I was like, was it even real with us? Like, what was it? And I think, again, like, I thought at first, I was like, damn, did I do something to him to make him feel that way? Did I hurt him? Did he not enjoy it? Like, I don't know. I was just going through my Rolodex of reasons that it may have been my fault. But at the end of the day, I contend that you can't make somebody else cheat. Also, just like you can't make somebody else want to be with you, you can't. And so, in either situation, right, the common resolve is really the truth. The way out really is the truth. And that's why I respect people so much more when they just say, I don't want to be here anymore. You know what I mean? Or, yeah, I don't find you attractive anymore. I don't see you in that way anymore. Like, that stuff to me is like magic. It's like magic to my ears, because I'm like, yeah, I'm glad that you said it. And my feelings are not hurt. I want that level of honesty. And I believe that kind of was born from, the first situation, right? I knew how I felt. I felt horrible. So I would hope that anybody else that was cheating or engaging in something outside of a relationship, I would hope that their conscience would weigh on them and they would feel the same way, right? But if not, I would hope that people would at least put themselves in the other person's shoes and decide not to inflict any pain, hurt, or harm on somebody else that they wouldn't want to feel. Because I know for a fact I don't want to be cheated on. I know for a fact that I don't like the way it feels. I don't like the way it feels. And he wouldn't be the first guy that I dealt with that, I guess, stepped out. It's happened in other situationships or short-lived relationships as well. Was with the first time. It may not even be the last time. I would hope so, but who knows? You can be Your onus is being as honest in the situation and forthcoming as you can possibly be. And what the other person does is totally up to them. But the other onus is when you see it or you experience it or you have an inkling, like you have to do something about it, because you can't put everything on the other person, the onus on the other person, to be honest with you, no matter how much they say they love you, or no matter how much they keep showing back up at home every single day and night. And you're thinking to yourself, well, it's fine. It's a phase that will pass. It's not. There are so many people that will ignore the signs because it's like, hey, they're coming home every day. So this must be where they want to be, when that's very flawed thinking. Like, where they wanna be is where they go, and when they come home, it's probably where they have to be out of obligation. Name on the lease, name on the deed, don't wanna face the repercussions, or, face the divorce, whatever the situation is. That's why they keep coming back to you. They're not coming back because that's where they wanna be. They're avoiding the consequences, you know? So, you're the avoidance factor. The other person is the it factor because that's where they keep going to. So the onus is when you notice something, when you see something, like, you have to say something and you have to address it, right? And I think the other thing is, what does infidelity mean to you, or what does cheating mean to you? And define what that is. Because the other thing coming out of that for me was, what do you consider cheating? I think for me, I started only thinking about the sex because that's what happened in my relationship. Like, I stepped out with sex and then he stepped out with a whole bunch of everything. And so once I kind of learned more and more after we were done, I was like, God, like, this is a much wider, broader conversation than what I even thought about. And over the years, is like I would accumulate cheating situations. I would ask myself, like, at what point do you like what point do you either become numb, or like at what point do you reclassify cheating? At what point do you say, okay, I'm gonna allow one slip up? Because that was a conversation among me and friends. Like, would you leave on the first time, or would you allow a hall pass? And I'm like, a hall pass? I don't really get that whole hall pass thing. I feel like if your mind and your body is somewhere else, then that's where you need to go. Like, if you want to give somebody else your body, then that's where you need to be. And if you want to give somebody your mind, for sure, your heart, your feelings, all of that, then you definitely need to be over there and not with me. Like, I don't want anybody to stay with me out of obligation. I don't want anybody to stay with me so that we can say we got a decade or 2 decades together. I don't want none of that. Like, I want you to go where you feel most comfortable, but I don't want to go with you at all. And I don't want to be a part of it at all. And that's one of the things that after my last relationship, my most recent relationship, it's something that I had to contend with again. And so, if I can give some contrast, this is about 15 or 16 years apart between my first relationship and then this last one that I was in. So, first relationship lasts for about a year, and then this last relationship lasted for about 5, give or take a couple months. So, walking out of the last relationship, and he cheated. He did end up cheating. And when I found out that he cheated, and I found out he cheated because there were pictures of him and the guy kissing. I'll just say that for context. So I found pictures in his wallet of him and the guy kissing. And so when we were having conversations after the fact, he was telling me that him and the guy never slept together. He's like, we never slept together. We never did anything. We kissed like the one time in that photo. And at first, I'm not gonna lie, I hadn't thought about cheating in a very long time because I hadn't really been in a situation where I had to, but here I go through my Rolodex of cheaters, and the majority were in my 20s. Not me cheating, the guys cheating or stepping out. So that was in my 20s. So now at the tail end of my 30s, or should I say mid 30s? No, tail end of my 30s is more appropriate. Mid to late 30s. Let's just go with that. I'm faced with this conversation again. I'm like, how do you feel about cheating? Because you've not updated your thinking on cheating in so long. Like, how do you feel about it? And one of the things in conversations, beginning conversations with men that I have, is my deal breaker is cheating. It is 1000% cheating. Like once you step out, you step out. And I've said that continuously. I know I do because I remember recently, like in my single years, every time I have this conversation, I tell them like my deal breaker is cheating. Like I'm not gonna be able to do it. And so this time, uh, with my ex, he's telling me that, we've only kissed, we've never had sex. He's emphasizing that. And so now that's jarring a question in my mind, like, what is cheating then, Mike? If he's telling you that they never had sex, which I don't believe it. Listen, I believe when two men get together, it's it's very primal and it's very like let's get it on. So I don't believe for a second that they did not, but he said he maintained it. That's what I'm that they it is what it is. And it doesn't even matter at this point. But I was like, even if they did not sleep together, how do you feel about it? And that's how I came to this classifying the different types or layers of cheating because I'm like, okay, if you said you did not have sex, which is what I probably would have thought and would have placed all of my stock in, in evaluating cheating prior to. But now I'm like, okay, so this is called what? Emotional cheating. This is like intellectual cheating. Like what physical but not sexual cheat? Like what is this? And how am I supposed to reconcile it? Now, all of this is an internal monologue of mine or internal dialogue, however you want to look at that. But these are all very internal things that are happening for me. And so I went back and forth like, okay, could I be with him after this? And then I was like, no, I don't think so. It still feels like a betrayal. And I tried to wrap my mind around, okay, they like spending time with each other. What does that look like? Maybe I need to go back and ask these questions. And what does that mean? I really was going through it because I was trying to decide, like, was it worth it for me to just go ahead and leave like I wanted to do? Because I had always upheld like cheating to me, you step out on me, we're done. And I never really thought about whether it was sexual or not. I just thought cheating is cheating. I didn't really think that deeply into it. And so I remember asking him if he was in love with the guy. I remember I called him up and I was like, let me ask you, like, are you in love with him? And he said, well, he's my friend. So I love him. I have love for him. I said, but are you in love with him? I said, because when you and I have conversations, you say that you're in love with me. I said, correct. I said, do you believe that you're in love with me still? He was like, of course I am. You know I am. And I said, okay. But when I asked you if you're in love with him, you don't know, or what is that? And he was like, I forgot how he described it, but basically he was saying like we haven't he basically his answer basically gave me that he didn't know because they hadn't had the opportunity to figure it out. And when he said his answer, I said, okay. I said, well, I think that you owe it to yourself maybe to go and see what it's like then. Because to me, and it was at that point that I knew that we weren't going to be together. And so, yeah, I encouraged him to go and figure out what that was like. And we had subsequent conversations. And I think it didn't even register to him that I was serious. Like, you need to go figure that out. And to me, what happened was I realized that your mind and your heart was somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I felt. I was like, yeah, his mind and his heart is somewhere else. Because if he would have unequivocally said to me, no, I'm not in love with him, and it was absolute, I would have probably considered, I'm not gonna lie, I would have probably considered taking him back and being like, yeah, come on home. But it was the fact that when I asked him, there was so much hesitation and tap, tap kind of tap dancing, tiptoeing around the question. And when we finally got there and it was like, well, we haven't even had the opportunity to figure that out yet. I was like, okay. So there's a question mark in your mind that you really need to go and answer. But you're going to have to answer that over there without me being a part of it. And so that was the deciding factor in me letting him go, because I was like, yeah, your heart and your mind is somewhere else. Like, you are engaging in thought of what it would be like to be with this man and be over there. So whether you feel like your body should be here with me, or you feel like because of history and rapport and comfortability that you should be here with me because that's what the way it's been, nah, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. I don't want to be with somebody that wants to be somewhere else. And so I encouraged him to go and do that. And, he went and did that. And so the beautiful thing about that is the freedom. The freedom. I don't know what it would have been like if we would have stayed together. Would I had been wondering if he wanted to leave? Would I be wondering if he stepped out? Because the truth is, if I stayed with him, and it was one of the things that I thought about, if I would have stayed with him, he would no longer be able to be friends with the guy, because they were friends first, best friends at first. So there would be no way that that relationship could continue. And number one, I don't want to have to make that kind of request, because it doesn't feel right to make that kind of request, and I shouldn't have to. And the other thing is, even if I did make the request, or even if, he did offer it as a solution, chances are somewhere down the line, I would have been wondering if they were still communicating with each other. So in this particular moment, I realized it for what it was. And I just was like, okay, I'm not going to prolong this thing. I'm not going to prolong this hurting. I'm not going to keep going down the rabbit hole of what ifs. What I know for sure is that there is a question in your mind about where you want to be, and you think you may want to be over there. And so that's that's that on that. And I let it go. But I think that was the freeing thing, because I walked away and I was like, okay, cool. And I walked away also feeling like they deserve to be happy. I walked away like they deserve to be happy. And I when I tell this story to people, and I say to them, like, I encourage them to be together. And before they moved in together, like, I was having conversations with him, like, yeah, well, why don't y'all just move in together? It just makes so much more sense. I encouraged him all the way up until he actually did do it. And so the other side of that for me was just like realizing that whoever is meant for me is meant for me, and whoever is meant for you is meant for you. And that's what I walked away with. I was like, it serves me no purpose to be upset. It serves me no purpose to hold on to him or the idea of him, because who he's meant to be with, he's with. And I want the same. I want to say I want the same love. I don't want the same love. I want my love as well, right? I want what's mine. So of course, like, I could only naturally say, like, go get yours wherever it may be. But that is something that I wouldn't have thought about hadn't I faced this hard truth about cheating. And it's something that hopefully does not happen to me again. But if it should, that my lens would be fine tuned enough, but also pliable enough to expand in the conversation because, or the situation, because I still don't know in the hierarchy or in the tiers of cheating. I don't know how I 100% feel about all of it. And I do keep contending that if well, for whatever reason, emotional, physical, sexual, whatever type of cheating it is, I'm like, I have this thing that I'm gonna leave, but I don't know because I would have completely expected to just walk away cleanly, like drop of a hat, and not have any questions for that, or to be contemplating it, after that last situation. But there I was thinking to myself, like maybe if he has the right answer, I can stay. And so one of the things that I think about even now is the sexual cheating to me isn't the worst. That's the hard truth. The sexual cheating isn't the worst type of cheating for me. After sitting with it and kind of letting it digest, I think if when I look back at that situation, I think if I had learned they have maybe screwed around one time, maybe one night of partying went a little bit too far, they screwed one time, I think I would have been more apt to handle that than for me to find out like your mind and your emotions were entangled. Because I think that's a little harder to walk away from, for me anyway. Because to me, sex is one of those things that you can do with or without emotional attachment. It happens all the time. People pay a fee for it and they go about their business. I don't know if anybody knows that. And I don't know where in the world you are listening, but there are places where people pay and they go on their way with no attachment, no expectations. They just come and they go, literally. So I do understand that there are times where there is no emotional or mental attachment. So to me, if I were to deal with it, and I don't know if I could deal with the physical, but if it were one time, I think I probably would have been like, yeah, okay. I mean, they still couldn't be friends, but I think I would probably deal with that a little bit better. Now, if it was a recurring physical situation, I wouldn't be able to do it because something about that has got you over there. But I think if a slip up occurred, I think I would be able to do that, provided that there weren't any, feelings involved and things like that. But I don't know. But in my thinking, if I'm being honest, I may be able to get past that one time. Is that a hall pass? No. Is that me kind of working through circumstance? Yeah. And again, I don't know for certainty that I would be able to do it, but it just seems like when I go down the hierarchy of cheating, I done gave this thing so many classifications and barometers at this point. That one for me just seems like, okay, you did it. It was a mistake. Go on, whatever. But I don't know. The mental stuff has me like, yeah, no, it's not gonna work. Um, but I think there's more to it. I think now that I'm thinking through this, there's so much more to it. There's all kinds of things that can happen as a result of cheating. And, an hour may not be long enough to have the full discussion now that I'm thinking about it. But what I will say is important is that you do talk about it and you do face the hard truth when it comes. Because the next thing in my life is I want to be married. And I used to not want that. I used to be one of those people that was like, I'm okay with an indefinite, boyfriend or whatever. And we could just be in relationship for as long as we could be in relationship. And I never really had the lens for marriage to say, like, I am committing in that way. I can commit, but I didn't want to commit in that way. And so now, since that relationship, I'm like, yeah, no, I want the forever thing. I absolutely want the forever thing. But in thinking about the forever thing, I always think about contingencies, and I also think about like what does growing look like over the years, and with the social landscape changing so much and everything being at your fingertips and so available, so on demand, I'm wondering what that looks like for marriage later on down the line, because I'm not dating for right now. And I think a lot of people think about their needs right now and they're like, yeah, this is the person that I want. This is who I want to be with. And I think that's what traps and tricks or traps and tricks. Well, I think it's what traps and sets people up for failure when you don't think beyond now. Like, you need to be thinking about 5 years, 10 years from now. And what does that look like? Not just you two as people, because both of you are going to grow in the time frame, right? And if you live for another, I don't know, 20, 40, I mean, I'm almost 40. So if I live another 20, 25 years, right? Like, what does 25 years look like with a person, and how do we grow together? And if there are going to be obstacles that might come our way, cheating is one of them. I don't either one of us could have the propensity to cheat. I don't believe that I will, and my heart and my mind is set up as such that I do not see myself cheating. I have not cheated since my 1920 or 19 or 20, whatever that was. I haven't cheated since that point, and I've never wanted to, because to me the feelings that I felt doing it and the feelings that I felt after I realized that it's been done to me and it's been done a couple of times, I'm like, yeah, I don't want that feeling and I don't want to give that to anybody. So I would say today in 2026, I don't think I'm going to cheat, but I think we all have the propensity to do something that is out of character for us. But what does that look like when it comes up? I'd rather, think about it now and maybe plan for it now than to wait till a bunch of things come up. Because the other thing is, as people age, right, issues become more prevalent health wise, and needs and desires change, and you get all of those hurdles and obstacles that just come with aging. Maybe one person's stamina is not what it used to be. Maybe one person doesn't feel or look, or maybe you don't experience them the same way. And so what does that look like? Yeah, I think you owe it to yourself to think through those things. So as I'm looking for a husband, or allowing a husband to look for me, or whatever that's going to look like, we find each other. Like, I think about those milestones and like what that could be. If my husband is terminally ill, like, am I going to be able to stay faithful? Am I going to want to step outside? And what is his position on the same thing? Would he tell me to go be happy somewhere? Would he be like, no? But I think these are conversations that are well worth having and hard truths worth addressing. Because I think, like I said, now I don't think that I would cheat, or I don't think that I would have a reason. But when you are confronted with things that you've never dealt with or never experienced before, you may not know what would happen. And the best you can do in the moment is use the information you have to the best of your abilities, and hopefully that's your guide or your north star. If you shall meet that, we would hope we wouldn't, but better to be prepared than to not have done anything. So these are things that I think about, and they are very, very hard truths as I get as I get older. But the beauty in it is that I'm willing to do the work, and I hope that I am lucky and fortunate and blessed by God enough to have a person that's willing to do the same thing. And if we find that we are at an impasse and we just can't reconcile, then that conversation becomes another hard truth that we have to face. And then how do we amicably separate? But this really was for me to express all of the angst and even the, recurring emotions and feelings that I have around discussing cheating. And as you can tell, probably, it is a much bigger conversation than most of us have, and probably more than what any of us ever wants to have. In a perfect world, we would never have to think about cheating in any shape or any form. But because we are not in a perfect world, these are things that could happen and oftentimes do happen. And so, my hope is that if you are a person who is contemplating stepping out for whatever reason, right? If you are thinking about it, I just implore you to sit with the hard truth. And the hard truth could be, I just don't love the person anymore. I just don't find the person attractive in that way anymore. I want to leave the person, but I feel obligated to stay. It could look like a number of things. It could just look like you've grown as a person and you want to try something different. You could still love them, you could still have all the care for them, but maybe you just are different and you want something different. And you should be free to go ahead and try that. But the truth is the only thing that sets you free. And in a world where some people are like, they may give you a hall pass to try it, or some people will say, let's separate and I'll wait for you. I don't know. Some people do for love, people do things for love. I don't know. But the truth is the only way that you're going to get to the right side of it. And so my hope is that everyone that is thinking about cheating, and those also that may be on the blunt end of cheating, my hope is that you face whatever truth it is. And maybe you're the person on the other side that the other person is cheating and you know why. And maybe you feel like, or that something you're doing is contributing. Maybe you're doing it on purpose. Maybe you're not doing it on purpose. Maybe you just don't want to let go, but you know that you should. My hope is that whatever your truth is, you confront it head on and let it be what it's going to be. But what I will tell you is that a slow destruction is far more painful than a quick destruction, if that's what you're going to call it in the relationship. So rip the band aid off today. That way you can heal. You can hurt, you'll hurt, but you'll heal and you'll find a new path tomorrow. But don't wake up, and let another day go by where you haven't allowed the truth to set you free. And that day turned into 100 days, into 1,000, and into decades of hurt. All right. So that is the Michael experience. I thank you guys so much for listening. And I will see y'all in the next one as we continue this series of hard truths. Y'all have a good one. Peace and love, y'all. Bye.